children get into conflict with the law? What happens when a child or somebody who is underage commits a crime? What happens to them? What should happen to them? What is currently happening to them? And what can we do about it? And with us to help us understand exactly what this is from many different angles is actually somebody who I just learned recently refers to himself as a recovering journalist. Karibu sana. You are the CEO of the National Crime Research Center, Dr. Mutuma Rutere. Karibu sana.
Thank you very much for
Karibu sana.
Thank you.
First of all, you need to explain to Kenyans why we have to recover from journalism. But that's a story for another day. Tell me something, sir. Where do we stand as a country when it comes to children in conflict with the law?
Yeah.
What are the numbers, perhaps, right now?
Well, thank you very much, first of all. Thank you for having me.
My pleasure.
And of course, one of the major challenges that we have always is numbers, getting the actual numbers of how many children are in conflict. The law, we know about 130 out of 100,000 children come into conflict with the law in the criminal justice system. Now, when you're talking about children in conflict with the law, what we mean is a child who is either suspected or accused of committing an offense.
Right.
Those are the children we are referring to as being in conflict with the law.
So this is even before conviction or sentencing?
Precisely.
A suspect?
Precisely.
A suspected criminal in that way, or a suspected lawbreaker, and an accused lawbreaker, just at that level.
Yes.
Then that means that's quite a lot of people.
Yes, and that's why we are not calling them criminals. We're saying they're in conflict with the law. They could have probably been taken to the police station, or anyone in the criminal justice system has been called because they are suspected. And of course, the treatment of children is different from that of adults because fundamentally, the treatment of children is meant to be for in everything you do must be in the best interest of the child. In that respect, the criminal justice system will try to avoid incarceration, detention of children, institutionalization of children, but rather to promote mechanisms that give children a second chance, that get them away or divert them away from the criminal justice system. That reintegrate and rehabilitate them. And of course, if they are very young children, then of course, they don't enter the criminal justice system.
Wow. You know what? At this point, I still want to reach out to those who are watching us from home right now. This is a very big subject. It's a very important subject. All of us at home who are watching us, you have a connection with someone who is a child who is or has been in conflict with the law, by the definition that good CEO has given us. And perhaps even you, when you were a child, you may have been in conflict with the law at some point. We want you to participate in this conversation. We want you to send in your questions. The WhatsApp number is at the bottom of your screen. The phone number is also at the bottom of your screen. Call in. We will record that. We will have your question aired live. If you have a question on WhatsApp, send it. I have the WhatsApp with me right here, and I'll be able to capture it and read it, and be able to have a good guest give an answer to that. So please, I urge you to communicate with us. Somebody sent a question a little bit earlier, and they were asking, what are the needs? What needs does a child have whenever they come into, when they encounter the law, or the law enforcement agencies, or even what we call the criminal justice system? Great. What rights does a child have?
Great, thank you. That's a great question. And the National Crime Research Center, which I hand as the Director CEO, we actually recently did a study that tried to actually look at what are the needs of children, how are those needs being met, where are the challenges and the gaps. Some of the needs that we have identified from that study is one is legal representation. When children come into conflict with the law, they need legal representation. The law provides for children actually to have a legal aid, and that legal assistance is not charged to the child. It's drawn from legal aid. Children are also in need of counseling. Remember,
I'm so sorry.
Yes.
Let me stop you right there. I think this is something our people need to, we need to emphasize that. If you are a child, if somebody gets into trouble with the law, they are entitled to legal representation.
Yes.
And this is not charged.
Yes.
It is part of legal aid.
Yes.
I think that's something people at home need to hear that. Thank you so much. And the second, you're saying something.
Thank you. Then children, of course, some of the other needs are counseling, psychological support. Obviously, children who, remember, they are still growing, they will need education. They don't stop education, even whatever stage they are or whatever they are in the criminal justice system. Children must always be provided education because it's a right and responsibility of the community and the state.
Right.
Basic needs, the children, remember, wherever they are, the children need those basic needs, and we have the responsibility to provide. So there are all these needs because they are still growing.
Right.
And it's ultimately the responsibility of the various actors in the justice system to ensure that these needs are met.
Actually met. And that's good. I think it's a very critical point to be made. And the second question that would come from that is, what in our Kenyan criminal justice system or ecosystem is in place to meet these needs?
Thank you. Yes, as I've pointed out, our legal system is very, very robust in terms of the protections of the child. Going to the Constitution, that the test for every action taken, for every process is the best interest of the child. That is what must guide whether it is a court process, whether it is the diversion process. Now, remember, children, if, for instance, they have to be charged with offenses, we have children's courts. Their matters go to the children's court. These are to be held in camera, these trials or prosecution. There is a protection so that information about their cases is not released to the public.
Right.
And again, I said, there is also a diversion program. The prosecution and other actors have a responsibility where it is merits to actually divert these children from going to the criminal justice system. In diversion, what you are talking about is actually, for instance, provide them opportunities to go and reconcile, to go and make amends with the person they have wronged, so that they can now get into rehabilitation and be reintegrated. They could actually also be released to the custody of someone who is fit and responsible. A guardian of sorts. Okay. These children also could be committed to if, for instance, they have committed offenses that require a form of institutionalization. We have the BOSTO institutions.
Right.
Which are under the prison system.
Are those what used to be called approved schools?
The approved school used to be different. They were different. Now they are called. They have a different term now. Okay. And the model of those schools was basically you give them a shock. But that doctrine, that philosophy has been abandoned. Right. Now,
which was quite traumatizing.
Which was quite traumatizing. Yeah. Right now is basically the focus is on rehabilitation.
Right.
Now, the BOSTO institutions, those are only 3 in Kenya, and they are really the ones that where the children have committed certain form of offenses, let's say like murder, then they can be taken through those institutions until some time.
Right.
So, but then there are many other mechanisms that actually take care of the children. We've talked about this diversion program. They can also be sent to carry out community service. Or there could be a question where they actually pay a fine. When it comes to a fine, the parents or the guardian may be the ones the ones to pay the fine.
Cost, yes.
So there are many options of dealing with the children who find themselves in conflict with the law through the criminal justice system.
Now, there's a question here that came in a little bit earlier when we teased this, and it was around, so someone was expressing concern. This person has actually been in contact with the criminal justice system. They've been remanded at one of the remand centers in across the country. And they said when they were there for a few weeks, awaiting their case. When they were there, they witnessed underage people in those remand centers, put in the same spaces as adults. And not just adults, they were mixing them, according to the person, they were mixing them with hardened criminals and so on. And so they were worried that these people, these young people, would come out even more hardened, or even more perhaps radicalized, or sent on a path of no return. What would be your response to that?
Yes, and you are right. And these are some of the gaps and weaknesses in the system. Children, for instance, are not supposed to be held or detained, even temporarily, in the same space as adults. I mean, for obvious reasons, their vulnerability. But we know there are many instances where this happens. We know many of the detention facilities, like police stations, don't have sometimes separate cells or holding centers. Actually, they should not be in cells. There have been guidelines issued on that, about that even by the Chief Justice. If you go to some of the police stations, you will see them, that children should not be held in the same room or the same holding facility with adults, for the reasons that you have mentioned. Children are very vulnerable, and when you put them together with adults, many things can go wrong. So these are some of the challenges and gaps in the criminal justice system.
You know, there's a tendency to kind of write off some of the children that actually get involved at whatever level with what might be considered criminal behavior or antisocial behavior, or even as we call them, in conflict with the law. There's a tendency to write them off. Huyu ameharibika, yake imeisha. What would you say to those kinds of beliefs? Maybe even born out of frustration of the crime that allegedly has been committed.
Yeah, thank you. That's a good question. First of all, we need to study better why children, for instance, would get into conflict with the law. There are many reasons. There's often an assumption that it's because of a flaw in their character, and therefore we need to punish them or give up on them. But we know that there are many reasons, many vulnerabilities that actually lead young people into that kind of behavior. Some of them are contextual, about the environment. What do children do during holidays? If they are only hanging around a place where drugs are being sold, they are young people, they are experimenting. The temptation to get into drugs is very high. So the alternatives is the responsibility of the society and the adults and the community to ensure that we provide alternatives to ensure that this vulnerability of children is actually addressed. The principle is that no child is beyond correction. One can even extend that to human beings. The reason why, even to adults, even the reason why we call our prison service correction service is because the belief is that these are correction services. No one is beyond correction. No one is beyond rehabilitation. Less so a child whose character is only forming. There is no basis, there is no point where we say this one we have to give up on them.
There's a question here. Two questions actually that have come in. Earlier on, just before we began, we were talking about a particular prescribed group, but all across the country and all across the world, the issue of organized crime and criminal gangs is something that a lot of people can actually say they've experienced, either as victims or even as witnesses to this. Could you help us understand, because one of the concerns even now among stakeholders is not just radicalization of children, but also the the recruitment of children into organized gangs and organized criminal activity. What would you say is the reason that draws so many of our young people into these gangs? And what is this thing that can be done, sort of if there's a gap to fill it, to prevent this from happening?
Great. This is a major challenge. This is an issue of concern. We have seen juvenile gangs in places such as the coast. This is a big challenge. Gangs of young children as young as 12.
Wow.
And really, what does research tell us? Part of it is that at that age, all these young people want to belong. They are looking to belong to something bigger. All young children, when we were growing up, you rambled to be that kind of a tough person was the most attractive thing. Here are gangs that provide the possibility of belonging to such a group, to feel powerful. And when these children don't have the community and the social structures to guide them away from these groups, it becomes very, very easy for them to be recruited. So it is no surprise. Globally, you see that the attraction to such groups is very prevalent. I mean, they say the devil always has the best tunes. So you competing with the music from the devil and the music from Go on the Right Path, using that illustration. You preaching to your children to follow the right thing or the right path, whereas there's another group here that is looking very attractive. You can get money, you can feel powerful, you don't need to follow what you are being told. I mean, this feels great for a child if they don't have other options and they don't have the care and the guidance. And so it is a symptom of problems within the society itself, rather than necessarily a character flaw, within these children.
You say that, and I remember there's a report from the University of Kingston in Jamaica. I may forget exactly what it says to the letter, but the gist of it was there's a very popular artist in Jamaica by the name of Adidja Palmer. They know him as Vybz Kartel. Vybz Kartel is in prison right now for murder. And he has been incredibly influential to generations of youth in that country. And a lot of his music has been criticized as to having perhaps what you might call antisocial messaging, a lot of criminal encouragement and so on. And some people who've been caught up in the Jamaican criminal justice system have actually pointed back to Vybz Kartel as an artist and the messaging in his music as part of the things that kind of influence them into crime. Can you talk to us about the role of role models and people like that in society in shaping the fates of these generations?
Absolutely. And that's the reason why one of the very important interventions when you are dealing, for instance, with young people who have gotten into gangs and trying to bring them out of gangs is to think of what role models, who are they going to listen to?
Yes.
Chances are they are not going to listen to their elders. So who do the young people listen to? They are listening to people who are seen to be against the system, counterculture, and so rebels. This is the nature of young people and the nature of youth. They look cool. So you have a competition between those kind of messages and the message that says don't do that. This is the major challenge. So where are the young people therefore being trained or being socialized to gain the critical skills that even though these kind of vibes and lyrics sound very cool, that's not what I need to actually follow. So the role of critical skills in the education system, in other institutions of socialization are so important. It is not by saying don't listen, but by giving them the skill to choose that I don't want to follow this particular, and giving them alternative role models that they can live up to. Mentorship is one of the major important interventions when it comes to crime prevention or breaking that cycle of recruitment into criminal activities. Who are the young boys looking up to?
Who are heroes?
Who are their heroes?
Right.
You know, there was a story that I was listening to on BBC that I was saying in the UK that, young women are, the only area that actually young men are ahead of young women is crime.
Wow.
This is in the UK. And you could say that in many countries.
That the average criminal is male.
Is male and young.
Wow.
There is part of the reason is who are the role models for the young men and young boys and young children.
That's a question for society to answer.
Absolutely.
Talk to us a little bit about, quick one, there's a gentleman here. We've just got a question from one of our viewers. Isaiah Munyao from Umoja 1 in Nairobi is asking, can a person who's over 18 years old and be college still be termed as a child? Or what age limits a child?
Yes, no. The simple answer is no. In our law, you are not a child if you are over 18. Once you're over 18, you're not a child. Even if in the criminal justice system, somewhere incarcerated, once you reach that age, then you moved to the adult part.
So 18
is the age of majority.
You know, I think I understand where Isaiah Munyao is coming from, because there's also the so-called legal age for drinking and a few other things is 21.
Yes.
So between 18 and 21, a lot of people still think, we are still children.
Yes.
Also, another question that came here is, at what age does the legal system use to deal with this child? Is it the age at the time of commission of the crime, alleged commission or accused commission of the crime, or is it the age as at when they actually appear in front of the court? Which is which?
Yes, when you are arrested, say you are 17 years old and then you turn 18 as the process is going on, by that time you have transitioned.
Oh, wow.
So once you transition, then the determination then, the determination where you go after that will be determined by when you have transitioned. But when you committed the offense, it's when you committed the offense. That is the business of determining your culpability. Where you go after that, the age you have reached will be determined. For instance, if you committed an offense, you're under 12 years old, you're not criminally culpable, right? So even if you have turned 13 or 14, but you're being tried when you're 13, 14, and you commit an offense
when you're
12, you're not criminally culpable.
I see.
Yes. So I hope that clarifies.
That indeed does clarify that. And earlier on, when people knew that you were coming, I was given a question to ask you.
Yes.
They said, what happens when somebody commits a crime, particularly there's this crime, defilement. Let me call it that as a crime.
Yes.
There are concerns that, for example, and I was given a scenario, and allow me to relate just to you.
Sure.
A young man is 17 years old. Oh, we have a call. We'll hold on that for a second. Hello, good evening. How are you?
Hello, good evening. Hello.
Yes, Ndugu, how are you?
Yes, how are you?
Fine, thank you. Where are you watching us from?
I'm calling you from Kakamega.
Oh, excellent. What is your name, sir?
Yeah, my name is George.
Oh, George. And what is your question tonight?
My question is it approved schools better than taking children to juvenile prison?
Just say that again?
I'm asking about these children who are taken to juvenile prison.
Okay.
Is it approved schools better than taking them to juvenile prison?
Right. Have you got the question?
No.
I think he's asking, isn't approved schools better than taking children to prison? Is that your question, sir?
Yes, that's
all
the
right.
question.
All right. Thank you so much, George from Kakamega. Thank you so much.
Yes.
Our CEO here will answer your question, and thank you for watching.
Yes.
All right. We also have somebody here from Uganda. They're actually watching online from Uganda. They're going to send, let me ask them to, to send a question. Right. So, would you have an answer to this? I think we are wondering:
yes,
is approved schools better as an option than sending children to prison?
Yes. Thank you very much for that question. Sending children to prison is the last resort. Is the worst possible outcome. If that is any process that leads to incarceration of children in the Boston institutions, which is where they are sent, it's really the very last resort. The approved schools, right now what we have are actually the youth correctional centers. So they are about correction. They are no longer about the toughness of approved schools, but they are correctional in the sense that if you commit, you are a first offender, you're taken through a correctional service, they help you correct your behavior, counseling, and then you are out of the process.
Right.
So these are not prisons, but they are just, you go through a process of correcting your behavior with mentorship.
And I think just to remind our audiences, you said there was a change in terms of the philosophy behind these institutions. That approved schools were there for shock value, to put the fear of God in these children. But the approach has changed to now one of rehabilitation.
Exactly.
Okay, all right.
Exactly.
George from Kakamega, I hope that's clear. If it's not, call back again and we'll be happy to sample that question. Back to the question that we had before. I was given a scenario. A young man is 17 years old who's just finishing Form 4, is in a relationship with a younger student, say 14-year-old, 15-year-old or 16-year-old, and then there is a pregnancy, or perhaps the relationship, which is a sexual relationship, is discovered, and the young man is arrested and tried as an adult for the charge or accusation of defilement. And a lot of, so the person who said this said, a lot of young people have been caught up in this and have suffered tremendously because of this. What would be, from where you sit, what would be your assessment of this situation?
Well, thank you very much. I think this is a big issue, particularly the issue of sexual offenses, a lot of cases in the judicial system, in the prison system. There's been a lot of discussion about that, and the proposal to introduce what is called Romeo and Juliet clause, where it's a relationship between young people who are both below 18. The approach is not necessary to criminalize it and see it as defilement, but when it is young people between themselves. That process, I know, of changing the law has been ongoing, unless, of course, it's rape, which is very different, but the consensual relationship between underage, both underage children is something that society needs to face, society needs to think about, and address, because it's a reality. It's
a reality.
Yes.
Thank you for that distinction. We are getting even more feedback. We actually have a viewer from Uganda, Hesketh Ogwok Morris, and we'll be sampling his question a little bit later. But for now, let's take a short break. And we'll be right back. And we're borrowing some time from your favorite sports show, VAR, which will come right after we are finished with this very, very important conversation. So VAR fans, please bear with us. We'll be right back. Right, if you're joining us right now on Insight Tonight, we're talking about when children get into conflict with the law. And we're looking at some of those questions, and some of you have actually sent in your questions. First question from Hesketh Ogwok Morris from Uganda, who's watching via satellite. What are the crime prevention strategies among children? And I think I'll connect that to another question that we have here around the treatment of children who get into conflict with the law when they encounter law enforcement officers, people in the criminal justice system. How prepared, how trained, how sensitized are they to be able to deal with these children as children? Let's connect those two questions and we'll answer the rest.
Yes.
Please.
Thank you very much. The question of prevention is very important, because the whole focus on children is on prevention, that they actually don't reach that stage. And really where to look at is the places where they are likely to get into problems. The problems of bullying in schools, for instance. When these problems are left unattended and addressed over time, they can escalate to conflict and change behavior. The traumas that children sometimes might get into, that makes them actually behave in a way that leads them into a conflict with the law. The vulnerabilities of the environment where they are, when children are left unattended and supervised, what happens to them? So the whole system of ensuring that actually we are all the time aware of where the risks might come for the children, and addressing those risks is so important in ensuring that children don't get into the criminal justice system.
Right. But then they find themselves
and
there
then they
for
find themselves
for
one reason or the other. So
the reception they get from the officers.
Precisely. And the area of the capacity of not just officers but also others in the criminal justice system is one of the gaps we have identified even in our studies.
So there's a problem.
There's a problem in terms of the training, in terms of the strengthening of the capacities, and this is something that has to be done on and on in a continuous basis. Understanding how to treat children so that actually you rehabilitate them, you correct them, you put them in the path of away from the criminal justice system. This is an issue that has been identified by all the studies, that there are gaps in that.
Right. There's another question here around when these children are mixed with others, and then some things happen. Some of these children in holding facilities are sexually abused. Others are bullied by other detainees and so on. Talk to us a little bit about that.
This is a big challenge. This is a big problem. But I must, let me also paint a positive picture. I know many officers in many police stations who sometimes when they are faced with having to keep children and they have nowhere to put them, some go even with them to their homes.
Oh, yes.
And they will try to get an office to put them. So there are many, many good examples among the police officers, among other officials, of what actually is being done right. Because as I said, the idea is to ensure that these children are not placed in a situation where they can actually be violated, and even if they might be in conflict with the law.
Right.
That because, again, remember the principle is the best interest of the child.
Best interest of the child. And one last question here. We're entirely out of time. Thank you, VAR, for the time. Is that there's something African parents do, and where they send a child to a police station. Maybe the child has committed, has made a mistake or has misbehaved. So the child is taken to the police station to be toughened up, to see what would happen to them if they continue on this supposed path to crime. Or sometimes people are taken to prisons to toughen them up, to shock them, because hopefully that this shock will help in better behavior. What would you say to that?
I would say that probably a better option is to find ways in which police officers find a way to come and talk to children in schools, in the rest, in an unthreatening environment. When they are taken to the police station, they are already in fear. But when police officers are actually invited to come and speak to them in school on how to be a better person, your good behavior, when you see a police officer, you don't see a threat. Remember when now you are taking a child to see those conditions, the next time a child sees a police officer, they will see someone they need to fear, and yet you are trying to create a condition where police officers are helpers. And they are the people to seek help from. They are the people to guide them to keep away from crime. So it subverts the model and the philosophy, even the kind of policing we are thinking about. So I would say, rather than taking the children to the police station, invite the police officers to the community to speak to the children so that they keep away from the path of crime.
Right. Now, in a moment, I want you to prepare a parting shot. Talk to the people. I don't want to say Kenyans because we have Ugandans who are watching. Talk to us. Give a message from your heart and from your community, from the organization that you lead, to the people. But for now, I want to say thank you so much for people who've been watching. Thank you. Let's keep the conversation going on X or Twitter. Respond to the videos that you see there. Share the message, and hopefully somebody will be able to be touched. Your parting shot. There's your camera right there. Speak directly to those who are watching you tonight.
Children across all cultures, they are actually considered vulnerable and the responsibility of the community. So we can't give up on the children. whether they are seen to be in conflict with the law, it is the responsibility of all adults, all members of the community to work with the children to help them, because there's no child who is beyond the pale who cannot actually be given a second chance. And that's the responsibility. That's why we keep working, that's the responsibility of the community, and that's why we keep working with the criminal justice actors to see that they improve. And we've seen a lot of progress, particularly with a very strong legal system that we have at the moment.
Your message of hope to people out there?
Absolutely.
Absolutely.
A lot of good lessons, a lot of good work being done with children, with communities. Let's look at what is working and let's build on that. Let's not just see what is not working.
Absolutely. I couldn't have said it better myself. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Daktari. You are a recovering journalist.
Absolutely.
That's a story for another day.
Next time you invite me here.
Absolutely.
To sit where you are.
To sit, precisely.
Yes.
Good people, we want to say thank you so much for choosing TV47 to inform you of what's happening across your world tonight. We are humbled by that. We are the home of untold stories, and we thank you for choosing that. Isaiah Munyao from Umoja One, thank you so much for sending your question. Mr. Hesketh Ogwok Morris from Nakawa Division in Uganda, thank you for sending your message. Mariam and Emmanuel and Kayo, thank you so much for sending in your questions as well. My name is Victor Muyakane, and I bid you good night, full of God's blessings. Up next is VAR, rebooted, recharged, and supercharged.